Hi, let's go over the heart and talk about the intrinsic electrical conduction system, that system that makes the heart beat. So, this is starting on slide 10, and let me get rid of this drawing that was already on there. This is the system that conducts electrical action potentials around through the heart. So there are some pieces to it. Pretty much what's in green on the illustration is what we're going to be going through. So there is the SA node, and that is the main pacemaker of the heart. And it sets the basic rhythm. It's a clump of cells that if you open up the heart and dissect it, you can't really see this. Just looking at it, the only way to visualize this is staining on microscope slides. This conduction system shows up a little differently. But it's there. And the SA node is where the leader line is pointing. And then the other node that you need to pay attention to is the AV node, the atrioventricular node at the bottom. And that is located both nodes are located in the right atrium. So the SA node is closer to where the superior vena cava enters, and the AV node is still in the right atrium, but close to the AV valve. There are internodal pathways that run between the two nodes. And we'll follow this through, and this is essentially, you can think of it as the wiring, perhaps, to cause the heart muscle to contract. If there is a problem in this electrical conducting system, we wind up with dysfunction and arrhythmias. And arrhythmias are just an abnormal beating of the heart. And the electrical system is what controls this. So if there's a problem in this conduction system, it usually shows up with arrhythmias and other irregular features of heart function. One other thing that we'll look at with this conduction system is heart block. And it refers to blockage of this electrical conduction system. So we'll go through that. So these next several slides, this one entire short little mini lecture is on this electrical conduction system. So here's what it basically looks like, sort of broken down in a little more detail. So again, here is the SA node. The vena cava are not shown. And that sets the normal rhythm of the heart. And if the SA node is setting the rhythm and everything's normal, the heart is said to be in sinus rhythm. So the term sinus rhythm is a common term, and it means that everything's going fine and the SA node is controlling the beating of the heart. That's a sinus rhythm. So once the action potentials start at the pacemaker cells of the SA node, they then travel down, the signals travel down these internodal pathways toward the AV node. And at the same time that those electrical impulses are traveling to the AV node, the action potentials are also going off, spreading throughout the contractile myocardium of the atria. And that's what causes the atria to contract altogether, is the firing of the SA node, which then sends signals throughout both upper chambers of the heart, and they contract together. And that is what produces atrial systole, contraction of the heart. Meanwhile, the signals continue to travel through to the AV node, and at the AV node, when the signals get there, so here is, where's our AV node? Here. So when the signals get there, there's a delay, which is noteworthy. You'll need to remember this. And it's in the range, the normal range is 0.12 to 0.2 seconds. So the signal starts at the SA node, fires rapidly to the AV node, and then it pauses at the AV node before it then passes through and enters this bundle branch. So the next piece in this wiring system is this bundle of His, and that's what pierces the septum between the atria and the ventricles, is this bundle of His. And then that bundle of His, once it's into the ventricles, then it branches several times and goes down both sides of the interventricular septum as the left bundle branch and the right bundle branch. And those branches then travel rapidly to the apex of the heart. And once at the apex of the heart, then this conduction system reroutes the action potentials, and then they go off and they innervate the myocardium, the contractile muscle. And those are the Purkinje fibers. So the Purkinje fibers are the part of the electrical conduction system that actually innervates the contractile muscle of the heart, causing it to contract. And what's interesting is that the heart muscle, when the ventricles contract, and they're then in ventricular systole, when ventricular systole begins, it begins at the apex of the heart. And the contraction begins there, and then it spreads upward toward the valves. So it sort of contracts more or less like this as a ringing motion, and sort of wrings the blood, like wringing a dish towel, out of the ventricles up toward the valves, which are in the atrioventricular septum. There would be our mitral valve on the left side and our tricuspid valve on the right side at that location. So let's go to the next slide. And this is a chance to practice drawing it. So you can print this out. I would recommend that you do that. And basically just draw in, label, and briefly discuss the electrical conduction system. So let's do that together. You will do this on your own. If you want to pause the video at this point and get started on it, try it. That would be a great idea. And then you can come back to the video and check your work. So, assuming that you're back after having tried this, let's put in the SA node. We'll just do this in order. So there's the SA node and the AV node. get those into their relative position. And we could draw the internodal pathways. We're just drawing this system of conductive tissues. And we're not drawing the action potentials that radiate out into both atria. We're just drawing the conduction system, the wires. So if you want, you could just make those solid. There's not a great deal of significance with the dashed line. Sometimes I draw dashes. Either way, that's fine. And you would label those as the internodal pathways. And from the AV node, then we're going to draw this large bundle, called the bundle of His, presumably from a Deutsch German cardiologist, because the Germans spell cardiac with a K. And I think his last name was probably His. And this would be what am I drawing here? We'll go to the apex, and we'll do one on the right side of the heart as well. These are the right and left bundle branches. So let's put in our bundle of His. It's capital H, it's not His, it's pronounced His. Oops. And then the right and left bundle branches. There's the right one, and there's the left one. Okay? And then all we have to draw are the Purkinje fibers. And they just branch out and innervate the myocardium and cause the myocardium to contract. So those are the Purkinje fibers. And that's just the basic wiring of the heart. Those are the basic pieces. We'll talk about dysfunctions of it later on, and we'll certainly come back to it when we look at the EKG. So I hope that's helpful. Practice this, learn the pieces, and do the reading in the book. And we'll come back later.